Procrastination is one of those words we often toss around in casual conversation, usually with a bit of guilt or shame attached. I should have started earlier. I always leave things to the last minute. But what does procrastination actually mean, beyond the simple act of delaying a task? And why does it seem to affect nearly everyone at some point in life? At its core, procrastination is the voluntary delay of an intended action, despite knowing that the delay may result in negative consequences. It's not just about being lazy or careless. In fact, procrastination often occurs in people who care very much about the outcome. A student who desperately wants a good grade may still put off writing their essay until the night before. An employee who values their career may still wait until the last possible moment to finish an important report. The paradox is striking. People procrastinate not because they don't care, but sometimes because they care too much. This distinction is crucial. Laziness implies an unwillingness to act at all, often accompanied by indifference to the result. Procrastination, on the other hand, involves intention. The procrastinator usually wants to act, plans to act, may even prepare to act, but doesn't. The act of postponing is not a sign of indifference, but a struggle against internal resistance. This is why procrastination is sometimes called a self-regulation failure. It's not that the task can't be done, but rather that the individual struggles to align action with intention. Psychologists have studied procrastination extensively and found that it is a deeply human phenomenon. Surveys suggest that up to 95% of people admit to procrastinating occasionally, and about 20% of adults describe themselves as chronic procrastinators. These numbers cut across cultures, ages, and professions. Whether you are a student in Vietnam, a manager in the United States, or an artist in Europe, procrastination does not discriminate. It is not confined to any one demographic. It is woven into the human experience. So why does it happen? The brain is partly to blame. From an evolutionary perspective, humans are wired to prioritize immediate rewards over distant ones. Our ancestors survived by responding quickly to threats and opportunities in the present moment, a predator nearby or a chance to gather food. The brain evolved to value the now, not the later. In modern society, however, success often depends on long-term planning, studying for years before graduation, working steadily toward a career goal, or saving money for decades before retirement. This mismatch between an ancient brain and modern demands creates the perfect breeding ground for procrastination. Procrastination also thrives because starting is often the hardest part. A big project looms like a mountain, intimidating and overwhelming. Faced with that mountain, many of us turn away, finding comfort in smaller, easier tasks. Checking email feels productive. Organizing your desk feels responsible. Scrolling through TikTok feels like just a break. In reality, these diversions are ways of avoiding the uncomfortable emotions that arise when facing the big, meaningful task. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. In short, procrastination is not simply a matter of bad time management. It is emotional management. It is about how we handle discomfort, how we respond to fear, how we negotiate with our own brains. Understanding procrastination in this way is the first step to addressing it. Instead of labeling ourselves as lazy or weak, we can begin to see procrastination as a signal, a sign that something deeper is going on in our relationship with work, goals, and self-control. If procrastination is more than laziness, then the next question is, why does it actually happen? What forces, biological, psychological, and social, push us into this cycle of delay and regret? The answer lies in several interconnected causes that reveal how our brains, our emotions, and our environments conspire against us. 1. The brain's preference for immediate rewards. At the most fundamental level, procrastination is a tug-of-war between two parts of the brain. the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system, often described as the brain's pleasure center, is ancient and instinct-driven. It seeks comfort, avoidance of pain, and quick rewards. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is more rational and forward-looking. It plans, organizes, and considers the long-term consequences of actions. When you sit down to work on a big project, the prefrontal cortex may whisper, "If we do this now, we'll be prepared for the future." But the limbic system shouts back louder, "This feels uncomfortable. Let's scroll Instagram instead." Guess which one usually wins? Psychologists call this temporal discounting. We discount the value of long-term rewards because they feel less real compared to immediate pleasures. Writing a report that pays off in a month cannot compete with the dopamine hit of watching a funny video right now. This short-term bias is deeply ingrained in human nature. It helped our ancestors survive in a dangerous, unpredictable world, but it sabotages us in the age of long-term goals. 2. Fear of failure and perfectionism. Another powerful cause of procrastination is fear, particularly fear of failure. Many procrastinators don't delay because they don't care, but because they care too much. Starting a project means facing the possibility that it won't turn out perfectly, that it might be judged, that it could reveal our limitations. To avoid that pain, we delay. It's easier to tell yourself, "I'll do it later," than to risk failing right now. Ironically, procrastination itself increases the risk of failure, creating the very outcome we feared in the first place. Perfectionism is closely tied to this. If you believe something must be flawless before it is acceptable, you may find yourself frozen at the starting line. The task feels impossibly high stakes, so the brain chooses to escape rather than engage. Students who insist on writing the perfect first sentence may never finish their essays. Creatives who demand a perfect draft may never publish their work. Procrastination, in this sense, is a shield against imperfection, a way to protect the ego. 3. Overwhelm and task aversion. Sometimes the problem isn't fear, but sheer overwhelm. Imagine looking at a 50-page research project or a year-long work assignment. The scale of the task triggers avoidance because the brain interprets it as threatening. This is called task aversion. The bigger and more ambiguous a task feels, the more likely you are to push it aside. Your brain doesn't see the project as a collection of small, manageable steps. It sees a looming monster. In response, you clean your desk, check your email, or reorganize your files. Small tasks that give you the illusion of productivity while avoiding the real challenge. Task aversion is why breaking things into smaller steps is such a powerful solution. But we'll come back to solutions later. For now, it's important to recognize that overwhelm is not just weakness. It's the brain's natural response to ambiguity and scale. 4. Dopamine and the trap of instant gratification. Modern technology has poured gasoline on the fire of procrastination. Social media, video games, streaming platforms, and endless notifications are designed to hijack the brain's dopamine system. Every like, every comment, every short video provides a microdose of pleasure. Over time, the brain learns to crave these quick hits, making long, effortful tasks feel even less appealing. This is not just a matter of willpower, it's neurochemistry. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of motivation, and when it's trained to respond to fast, easy stimuli, it becomes harder to sustain motivation for slower, more complex rewards. That's why it feels easier to binge watch a show than to finish an assignment, even though the assignment has greater long-term value. Our environment is saturated with distractions engineered to exploit our neural wiring. To procrastinate in this environment is almost inevitable without conscious resistance. 5. Social and environmental pressures. Finally, we cannot ignore the role of environment. Stressful workplaces, unrealistic deadlines, Unsupportive families or chaotic surroundings can amplify procrastination. If you're constantly pressured, you may shut down rather than engage. If your environment is full of interruptions, focusing on deep work becomes nearly impossible. Procrastination is not always an individual flaw. It can also be a symptom of structural problems in schools, workplaces, and society. For example, companies that overload employees with tasks but provide little clarity or support often breed procrastination as a coping mechanism. The conspiracy of causes. When you combine all these factors, the brain's bias for immediate rewards, the fear of failure, the weight of perfectionism, the overwhelm of big tasks, the pull of digital distractions, and the pressures of environment, you get the perfect storm. Procrastination is not just a bad habit. It is the result of multiple psychological and societal forces colliding. Understanding these root causes helps us see procrastination more compassionately. Instead of blaming ourselves, we can recognize the forces at play and prepare to fight back. But what happens when procrastination becomes chronic? When it's not just an occasional delay, but a lifestyle pattern? That's what we'll explore next. If you want to overcome procrastination, the first step is learning to recognize it in all its disguises. Procrastination is not always obvious. It doesn't always look like someone lying on the couch, watching Netflix, and doing nothing at all. In fact, procrastination often hides behind a mask of busyness. People who procrastinate may appear active, but they are often avoiding the very task that matters most. Signs of procrastination. Chronic delay of important tasks. The most obvious sign of procrastination is simply putting off the work you know you should be doing. The classic example: a student has an essay due in 2 weeks, but spends the first 13 days doing everything except writing the essay. The night before, panic sets in, and the essay gets finished in a caffeine-fueled rush. The job gets done, but at what cost? Busy work and displacement activities. Procrastinators often substitute one task for another. They reorganize their desks, update their playlists, clean their inboxes, activities that feel productive but are ultimately diversions. Psychologists call this displacement activity. The brain is satisfied because you're doing something, but deep down, you know you're avoiding the one thing that truly matters. Waiting for the right mood. Another hallmark is the belief that you must feel inspired or motivated before starting. I'll write when I feel creative. I'll exercise when I feel energized. The truth is, motivation often comes after you begin, not before. Waiting for the perfect mood is a classic procrastination trap. Excuses and rationalizations. Procrastinators are masters of self-justification. I work better under pressure. I still have plenty of time. It's not urgent yet. These excuses provide short-term relief, but long-term regret. While it's true that some people perform reasonably well under pressure, consistently relying on last-minute energy creates unnecessary stress and weaker results. Task switching and distraction seeking. Constantly switching between tasks. Checking your phone. Opening new browser tabs. These are micro forms of procrastination. They fragment attention and prevent deep focus. Even telling yourself just 5 minutes on social media often turns into an hour lost. Consequences of procrastination. Occasional procrastination is human and relatively harmless, but chronic procrastination carries heavy costs, affecting not just productivity, but also mental health, relationships, and even physical well-being. Increased stress and anxiety. Procrastination and stress are best friends. The more you delay, the less time remains. Deadlines loom larger, and anxiety rises. This stress doesn't just exist in your head. It manifests in your body. Racing heart, tense muscles, headaches, and trouble sleeping. Chronic procrastinators often live in a near constant state of low-level panic. Lower quality of work. When you complete tasks at the last minute, you sacrifice quality. Rushed writing is weaker writing. Hasty problem-solving misses details. A presentation prepared overnight is less polished than one developed thoughtfully over weeks. Procrastination robs you of the chance to refine, review, and improve. Damage to reputation and relationships. In professional settings, procrastination can damage your credibility. Missing deadlines or turning in rushed work undermines trust. Colleagues and managers may start to see you as unreliable, even if you are talented. In personal life, procrastination can strain relationships. Putting off important conversations, errands, or commitments leads to frustration and disappointment in others. Loss of opportunities. Some opportunities are time-sensitive. Apply late, and the job is gone. Delay too long, and the chance to invest, create, or participate evaporates. Chronic procrastinators often look back with regret, not just about what they did poorly, but about what they never started at all. Erosion of self-esteem. Perhaps the most damaging consequence is internal. Each time you procrastinate, you make a promise to yourself and then break it. Over time, this erodes self-trust and self-respect. You begin to think, I'm lazy, I'll never change. This negative self-image reinforces the cycle, making it even harder to take action in the future. Impact on health. Surprisingly, research links chronic procrastination to worse health outcomes. Stress hormones weaken the immune system. Delaying medical checkups or exercise routines can worsen physical conditions. Procrastination is not just a mental habit. It can be a physical liability. The vicious cycle. One of the cruelest aspects of procrastination is how it feeds on itself. You delay a task, which increases stress. The stress makes the task seem even harder, so you delay further. This feedback loop tightens like a noose. Psychologists call it the procrastination cycle, and breaking free requires conscious effort. Imagine someone who puts off preparing a work presentation. As the deadline approaches, their anxiety spikes. To soothe the anxiety, they distract themselves by binge-watching TV. But as they waste time, their guilt grows, adding yet another layer of stress. Eventually, the task becomes so intimidating that avoidance feels like the only option. This cycle can repeat for weeks, months, or even years, especially with long-term goals like writing a book, starting a business, or pursuing education. A real-world example. Take Sarah, a university student. She has a 5,000 word paper due in 3 weeks. On day 1, she tells herself, I'll start tomorrow. The next day, she organizes her desk instead of writing. A week later, she still hasn't started, but she reassures herself there's still time. As the deadline closes in, her stress grows. Finally, on the last night, she stays awake until 4 a.m., frantically typing. She turns in the paper exhausted, knowing it could have been better. Her grade suffers slightly, but worse, she feels ashamed. She promises never to procrastinate again. Yet the cycle repeats next semester. Sarah's story is not unique. It's a pattern lived by millions of students, employees, and creatives worldwide. Procrastination steals potential, not because people lack talent or intelligence, but because they lose the battle against themselves. Why consequences matter. Understanding the consequences of procrastination is not about piling on guilt. It's about seeing clearly what's at stake. When you recognize that procrastination damages not only your productivity, but also your health, relationships, and self-esteem, you gain a stronger motivation to change. Awareness is the first step toward transformation. If procrastination is driven by the brain's craving for comfort and avoidance of discomfort, then the way forward is to design strategies that make action easier, smaller, and more rewarding. Overcoming procrastination isn't about sheer willpower. It's about building systems that work with your psychology rather than against it. Here are some of the most powerful strategies, tested by psychologists, productivity experts, and everyday people who've wrestled with procrastination themselves. Break it down. The power of small steps. Big tasks feel overwhelming because your brain sees the entire mountain instead of the first step. This phenomenon is called task aversion. The bigger and fuzzier a job feels, the more your brain avoids it. The antidote is to shrink the mountain. Instead of saying, write a research paper, tell yourself, write one paragraph. Introduction. Instead of study for the exam, try review one chapter summary. Research shows that once you start a task, even with a tiny step, your brain experiences what's called the Zeigarnik effect, an urge to finish what has been started. In other words, action leads to motivation, not the other way around. By tricking yourself into beginning with a micro step, you unlock momentum. 2. Use the Pomodoro technique. Developed by Francesco Cirillo in the 1980s, the Pomodoro technique is one of the simplest but most effective methods for beating procrastination. The idea: work in focused 25-minute intervals, followed by a 5-minute break. After 4 Pomodoros, take a longer break. Why does this work? Because 25 minutes feels manageable. Anyone can tolerate a little discomfort for less than half an hour. Once you start, you often find yourself continuing beyond the timer because the hardest part, the start, has already been conquered. The technique also builds rhythm. Work, rest, repeat. Instead of endless slogging, you get cycles of effort and recovery. 3. The 2-minute rule. Popularized by productivity expert David Allen and later James Clear. The 2-minute rule states, if a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Send that quick email. Wash the cup in the sink. File the paper. This rule has 2 benefits. First, it clears your mind and environment of small distractions that can pile up and feel overwhelming. Second, it builds a bias toward action. When you repeatedly practice starting tasks instantly, you retrain your brain to associate action with ease instead of resistance. 4. Optimize your environment. Your environment shapes your behavior more than you realize. A cluttered desk, constant phone notifications, or noisy surroundings all nudge you toward procrastination. By contrast, a focused environment makes starting easier. Remove distractions, silence your phone, use website blockers, and close irrelevant tabs. Create friction for bad habits. Put your phone in another room. Log out of social media, or use an app that locks you out during work time. Add friction for procrastination. For example, keep snacks or entertainment out of reach. Design cues for work. A clean desk, a dedicated study corner, or even a ritual like brewing tea before working can signal to your brain that it's time to focus. 5. Reward yourself. Your brain craves instant gratification. Use that to your advantage by pairing effort with reward. For example, tell yourself, if I write for 30 minutes, I'll watch 1 episode of my favorite show. Or, after I finish this task, I'll enjoy a special snack. This technique is called temptation bundling, combining something you should do with something you want to do. Over time, this positive reinforcement rewires your brain to associate work with pleasure instead of pain. 6. Practice self-compassion. One surprising finding from procrastination research is that beating yourself up actually makes procrastination worse. Shame and guilt create negative emotions, which your brain then tries to avoid by procrastinating more. Instead, studies show that self-compassion helps people recover faster and re-engage with tasks. This doesn't mean excusing procrastination forever. It means treating yourself with understanding. I delayed today, but tomorrow I'll take one step forward. Compassion breaks the shame cycle and gives you the resilience to keep trying. 7. Accountability and social support. Humans are social creatures. We're often more motivated when others are watching. Use this to fight procrastination by creating accountability. Tell a friend your deadline, join a study group, or work in a co-working space. Some people even use body doubling, where two people work silently side by side, either in person or virtually. Just having someone else present can reduce the urge to drift away from the task. 8. Reframe your thinking. Sometimes procrastination isn't about laziness, but about perception. If you see a task as a burden, you'll avoid it. If you reframe it as an opportunity, challenge, or even a game, it becomes less threatening. For instance, instead of, "I have to study for this boring test," try, "I'm training my brain to get stronger." Just like working out a muscle, mental reframing shifts your emotional relationship with the task. 9. Focus on progress, not perfection. Perfectionism fuels procrastination because it makes every task feel impossibly high stakes. The solution is to adopt a progress, not perfection, mindset. Remind yourself, a rough draft is better than no draft. 10 minutes of exercise is better than none. A flawed first attempt is the stepping stone to improvement. As author Anne Lamott puts it, almost all good writing begins with terrible first efforts. You need to start somewhere. Use technology wisely. While technology can be a source of distraction, it can also be a powerful ally. Tools like Todoist, Trello, or Notion help organize tasks. Apps like Forest gamify focus by letting you grow a virtual tree while staying off your phone. Website blockers like Cold Turkey or Freedom eliminate temptation. The key is to use technology intentionally as a shield against distraction rather than a source of it. 11. Build routines and habits. Ultimately, the best defense against procrastination is habit. When tasks become automatic, they require less willpower. Morning routines, evening planning sessions, or dedicated work blocks build momentum. Habits reduce the daily negotiation between should I work or not. You simply do it because it's part of who you are. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, emphasizes the power of identity-based habits. Instead of saying, "I want to exercise," say, "I am the kind of person who exercises." When your identity aligns with your actions, procrastination has less room to grow. The bigger picture. None of these strategies are magic bullets. Overcoming procrastination is not a one-time fix, but an ongoing practice. You will still have days of delay, moments of weakness, and tasks that scare you. The difference is that with these tools, you don't stay stuck. You start small. You build momentum, you forgive yourself, and you return to action. Breaking the cycle of procrastination is not about becoming superhuman. It's about learning to work with your human brain. And when you do, you unlock not just productivity, but freedom. The freedom to choose action over avoidance, growth over fear, progress over paralysis. So far, we have treated procrastination as a problem of psychology and behavior. We've examined the causes, the signs, the consequences, and the strategies to overcome it. But to truly conquer procrastination, we need to zoom out. It's not only about time management or productivity hacks. At its core, procrastination forces us to ask deeper questions about fear, meaning, and the human condition. Procrastination as a human signal. What if procrastination isn't just an enemy, but a messenger? Every time you delay, it signals something. Fear of failure, lack of clarity, loss of meaning, or exhaustion. Instead of condemning procrastination outright, we can listen to it. Why am I avoiding this task? What does it reveal about my relationship to the work, to myself, to my goals? Sometimes, procrastination is a clue that the task is misaligned with your values. Other times, it simply means you need rest, not another push of willpower. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, the overwhelming feeling of possibilities. Procrastination is often that same dizziness, a paralysis when faced with choices and consequences. To address it, we must learn not only to manage tasks, but to navigate our inner worlds, redefining success and failure. Much of procrastination stems from fear of failure or obsession with perfection. But what if we redefined success altogether? Instead of viewing success as flawless outcomes, we could see it as consistent effort, learning, and growth. The writer who produces one rough draft is already more successful than the one who endlessly postpones in search of perfection. The entrepreneur who launches a messy prototype learns more than the one who spends years polishing plans. This perspective aligns with Stoic philosophy, which teaches that our focus should rest on what we can control, our actions, rather than external outcomes. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. In this light, procrastination becomes less about missing a deadline and more about missing the chance to align our actions with our chosen identity. Discipline over motivation. One of the great misconceptions about procrastination is that we must wait for motivation. But motivation is fickle. It rises and falls with mood, energy, and circumstance. The more reliable foundation is discipline, habits, systems, and identity-based choices. A disciplined person doesn't ask, "Do I feel like it?" They act because it aligns with who they are. The athlete trains not because they always feel motivated, but because training is part of their identity. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, frames it this way. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Small actions compound, shaping identity over time. Discipline reframes procrastination from a battle of willpower to a series of identity-driven choices. The 1% philosophy. Japanese culture has a concept called kaizen, continuous improvement through small steps. Applied to procrastination, it means progress doesn't have to be dramatic. Improving just 1% each day may feel insignificant, but over a year it leads to massive transformation. Instead of demanding perfection or giant leaps, we can commit to small daily victories. This mindset makes starting easier and procrastination weaker. The 1% philosophy is also liberating. It tells us we don't need to conquer procrastination forever in one heroic act. We just need to win today's battle. Write one paragraph, send one email, take one step. Tomorrow, we do it again. Over time, the victories add up, and the habit of delay loses its grip. Learning from history's procrastinators, it may be comforting to know that even great minds have struggled with procrastination. Leonardo da Vinci took 16 years to finish the Mona Lisa. Victor Hugo, facing a publishing deadline, famously locked away his clothes so he couldn't leave the house and had no choice but to write. Franz Kafka wrote in his diary, "My life is a hesitation before birth." These examples remind us that procrastination is not a modern weakness, but a timeless human challenge. The difference is that some people learn to harness their delay into eventual creation, while others remain trapped. By recognizing procrastination as part of the creative and human process, we can be less harsh on ourselves and more focused on strategies that move us forward. Living with awareness. Ultimately, overcoming procrastination requires more than tactics. It requires awareness. Each time you notice yourself avoiding a task, pause. Ask, what am I feeling? What am I afraid of? What small step can I take now? This awareness transforms procrastination from an unconscious reflex into a conscious choice. You may still delay sometimes, but you'll do so with eyes open, and that awareness is powerful. The journey, not the destination. Finally, it's worth remembering that overcoming procrastination is not about achieving perfect efficiency or becoming a productivity machine. Life is not a checklist to be completed, but a journey to be lived with purpose. If procrastination teaches us anything, it's that time is precious and easily lost. Choosing action over avoidance is less about maximizing output and more about honoring our finite lives. The philosopher Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Procrastination is the art of wasting what we can never recover, our time. By choosing to act, even imperfectly, we reclaim ownership of our days and, in turn, our lives. Conclusion. Procrastination is not simply a quirk or a flaw. It is a mirror, reflecting our fears, desires, and struggles with meaning. To overcome it, we need strategies, small steps, Pomodoro